All right. So I was working on some of this stuff over the weekend and threw together a couple little tests here. So one of those tests was this one right here. You can see a little bit of some skating on this, but that's not too bad. A little dark. Yes, I haven't edited this to add some contrast and things that we will do in here. I just threw this together to test this. The lamp is fake. That's in this one. No, it's Baruda.
Do you have to add a fake shadow to the object?
Yes, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So, with this one, a little bit better, a little bit less swimming on here. Can you guess why there's less swimming on this one?
Because the carpet's a solid shape.
Carpet's flat. Well, you're closer.
I'm closer, but someone said something else about the carpet.
It's easier to track because it's got a lot of bumps.
Exactly. The more bumps, the better. Now, on your screen, that looks like a hot mess because it's a video that's trying to play back. So if I scrub through this, it's you can see it's not too bad. A little bit of skating on some of these spots, but not that bad. This is tracking some Lego bricks. And how many light sources do you think are in the scene? One. Sun. Correct. One light, which is a sliding glass door right in the back, shining on this. We're getting bounce and ambience from that illuminating other things, but there's only one light in this scene. As a matter of fact, in the other one light in the scene. A lot easier to animate one or to light something if it's a simple light setup. And for me, that was turning one light on and then leaving the rest to tweaking. So what did I work with for the beginning part of this? I was finding a spot on here and focusing. I was like, oh, this looks good. And just kind of shooting more footage than I needed. This is 35 seconds. You can give me like 4 seconds even. That's fine. It's, again, super jumpy on your screen, but not for me. So that is how we can easily get some materials in. And guess what? I chose the Lego brick on purpose. It's because it's an easy object, and there's a lot of them that you can have next to each other to try and play that guessing game of which one's real and which one's not. So I highly recommend picking something simple, or go the opposite direction and make something so we know that we're not trying to blend it necessarily into the background. We're having fun with this, and there's like a weird animal or an object that shows up out of nowhere that the viewer is aware of. This is stylized. So either of those would be a good idea. Now, how do we get these things all to show up? I'm going to try a new one in here, and hopefully this works. I'm going to go into File and then Import File. And first, let me grab the flash card. So this is almost as if you were also doing this. You would have your flash card. And now that that's done, all right, I'm going to import. And
You're recording all of this, so I don't have to like write down the steps you're taking, right?
I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I see OBS in the background, so I'm assuming you're recording.
I am recording, yes. I'm going to take this one right here.
I'm writing down the things that help designing the object and stuff.
this is my first reference. I've imported this in. I want to look at what my composition is going to say when I drag this in here. So I'm going to drag this in, just left click drag. And I'm going to go to composition, composition settings. And I'm going to drop this to 30 frames per second. I'm going to hit OK. And make sure that it shows up on the screen that I am recording. Okay. So I'm recording this. Cut my audio. And this is a long shot. It's like 25 seconds long, which is good because I can trim this down. So at some point, I zoom in. I think I'm going to keep that there. So if I go to maybe around here, if I want to shorten this thing down, I'm just going to grab this end, left click drag. Now I'm going to bring that over to the front. And from here to here,
Where'd you get white pumpkins?
the store, like,
No.
they exist.
Okay. I mean, I'll take your word for it, because obviously they exist, but I've never seen them.
No, there's no such thing. You have to paint them. So, now that I have this, I'm going to output this because I need this to be a sequence. So I'm going to go into composition and I'm going to add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. And you know how fun that is to fire up, so we'll let that fire up. While that's firing up, we can look at, did that even remotely want to? Yes, it is. It's firing up. We can look at this one right here. All that my scene for my Lego is a light. It is my Lego, and it has this thing. This is going to be responsible for my shadow. This is the object that I'm lighting, and here is the light that is illuminating it. So if I look at this from like my perspective view, you notice it's a little bit wonky, and that's because my camera that is tracking that doesn't look at it from the same view as the perspective viewport. It's going to look at it from its own made-up settings. So that's what's defining where these pieces would go. We want to make sure when we do this that this is set to 30 frames per second. That's very important to do this because that's how my reference came in. And so we're going to do that with this, hopefully, when this pops up.
So should we get the footage and position all of that, and do like the camera movement and stuff first before we can start designing our object in Maya?
You can do it the other way around as long as your concept is pretty strong. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Okay, so that didn't actually populate with this one. Let's add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. There we go.
It would be a pain in the ass to add like a flickering light to a jack-o'-lantern.
No, that should be easy.
Okay. Like if the jack-o'-lantern's fully fake as well?
Yeah, that should be easy.
Alright, cool.
All right, I'm going to change this, and it's taking forever to change these settings. There we go. I'm going to change this to, this is JPEG for now, and it's going to be matching source, so it should be the same resolution. And instead of that being 25,
Yes. Can we buy pumpkins now? Yeah, they're probably selling them still for like pumpkin pie
there's-
and stuff.
Thanksgiving is like a whole another holiday with pumpkins. So from here to here, you'll notice that there's an issue in my output. It's giving me this entire composition. It's going from 0 to 25. And the reason why it's doing that is because inside of After Effects, I'm at 0, and there's 25 seconds. To make that go down, we can just grab this piece right here and scale this down. Now, if I add that to Adobe Media Encoder Queue, I'm going to just remove these. So I'm going to select, whoop, right-click, remove, right-click, remove, and then do that again. So composition, add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. Here we go. If I click on this, it should show me it's only going to be 0 to 7 seconds. That's what I'm looking for. My basic instructions, I'm unlocking these. It's 30. That should be fine. That's all good. I'm going to now use maximum render quality, and then I'm going to hit, oh, nope. I'm going to change this to JPEG. Okay.
You want a JPEG video?
Yes. There's a reason. I want separate frames for this. So frame rate, that's good. This is good. I'm going to give it a home. So I'm going to go into my... So I'm basically doing the opposite of what we would do in Maya, where we would take video and then turn it into... or we would take images and turn it into video. I'm doing the opposite right here. So I'm going to put this into here. So I'm going to go into source images. I'm going to call this trick or treat. And now going in here, we'll call this sequence pumps, and now hit OK.
That's like the definition of my naming conventions too.
Pumps?
Yeah, I have something called Big Boy and then like Doggo.
Huh.
I know exactly what it means, but if anybody else looks at it, they're like, what the fuck? But nobody else looks at mine.
I recommend naming things that make sense for you guys. I'm just doing this because watching me do this is
For Scott's class,
boring.
I have it all like broke down because he requires that.
Yeah, I require that.
Well, yeah, but like when I'm like quick saving things, like I don't care about them, like so it's just like what they were at the time. So therefore, it makes sense to me. But then
All right. I am going to now start working with this. The first thing I need to do is I have this sequence, it's already output, and I'm going to actually open that now. So I'm going to go to File, New Project, don't even need that one anymore. I'm going to import that image sequence. And that image sequence is somewhere. It's going to be right inside of my advanced animation techniques. I put it in Lego Roto for whatever reason. It's not even in the rotoscope. I don't remember why my brain did that. But there it is, Trick or Treat. There's my first sequence. Don't open up anything else, just hit import, drag it in, and now we have our frames. This is what we're going to use to build up our camera track. So why did I do that first? Well, because this is the same footage I'm going to use to bring it into Maya. If I worked with the raw video file, it's going to cause some issues. So I'm using this instead. I'm going to go underneath Tracker and click on Camera Tracker. And now it's going to do that little fun thing in the background. It's going to render, or it's going to analyze, and then it's going to put a little, or a ton of points all over my scene. And you can tell how slow it is right here. So right now, we're at about 50%. And while this is doing this, I'm going to go into Maya, click File, Adobe After Effects Live Link. We're going to press this button. It's going to make this little window show up. And now, in After Effects, you got a bunch of stuff. I'm also going to go into File, or Window, Extensions, Adobe After Effects, or Adobe Maya Live Link. When I click on this, it shows this thing up. Pumps. So we know they're talking. We should be able to see that with Maya connected to Pumps. So we got both of them talking to each other, which is awesome because I can do a really quick step with this. So let's look at my tracking. I'm going to move that out of the way for a second. I'm going to hit spacebar.
What button did you press to get the tracking?
Track camera.
Oh, so it's on the track.
Mm-hmm. Now Isaac said something that was dead on. The more noise you have in your image, the more detail, the easier it's going to be able to track certain points in your 3D space. So right now, it's kind of surprising how little amount of points that I have on here. The main thing is that we can get something that stays consistent. And so while I scrub through, I'm just left clicking and dragging. I'm finding spots that I think are staying pretty stable. I see one right here. I see another one right there. And I see another one right here. As I scrub through, you'll notice some of these disappear and show up. They're not visible.
That one on the bottom set there is pretty good.
Here's the rule. You have to stay along one plane. So this is along one plane. That is working for me. So what I'm going to do is left click that one, hold down shift, left click, and left click. And then now, right click, create solid in camera. And so now when I scrub that through, it should look like that's actually on the doorstep. Now that might seem a little bit crazy because it's actually on top of the welcome friends or go away or whatever the heck that mat is that my wife put out. And also there is that, so it's overlapping that and then on the ground. So it's not technically on the same spot, but what I'm looking for is that it maintains that same space. I don't want that shifting or anything like that. So what I do is I give it a couple spins just by left clicking and dragging. That looks like it's really, really good. So now, in the good old fashioned,
What's it called? Create camera?
yep, create or track camera. So it's under tracker.
When you click the dots to make the green square.
Right click and yeah, create camera and solid. It'll be both of those options. Now that I have that, I need my live link to show up, which disappeared. Where is that? Okay. It's not connected. Let's see if Maya is having issues. That's good. I'm just going to reopen that one too. Okay, it's connected. Now, in After Effects, yep, because it's got that fun little animated thing going back. If I take this thing and this thing, I'm just holding on shift to select both of those, left click drag, drop it in, disappeared. Where did it go? Well, Maya. Bam. There it is. So I have this thing in Maya, but it looks really weird to me. First thing I need to realize is how long this animation was set up for. This is going from 0 to 211. So in Maya,
That's frames, right?
yep. Although Maya starts by default in frame 1. So if it's 0 to 211, what would it be if I were to go from 1 to something?
12?
Yes. So it may not feel like hard math, but when you're doing technical stuff like this, your brain can break very easily, believe me. So now that I have that, I'm going to go to my track solid and check out how small Maya made this, 0.5. I'm going to make that 5. All right, I can see that now. I'm also going to go inside of this. So this is what the tracking is doing, which hopefully, if I did this correctly, is similar to what Maya wants to see like this. So what I need to do now is be able to see my images that I rendered out as a sequence. And that's actually not a hard thing to do. To get that to show up, we need to go to environment under our camera. So that AE 3D tracker camera shape, we'll go in here, we'll go into image plane. I'll go create, and then load my images. So trick or treat, load that first pump image, and then press open image sequence. So now that I have that, we are now able to get this to move with our image. Now notice how much garbage that looks like. A lot of garbage, right? And the reason why is because our frame rate right now is at 24 frames per second, Let's change that to 30. And there we go. So by default, Maya does some little glitchy things, and that's one of those where it'll just randomly throw down an image that doesn't really make all too much sense. So we said 212, right? So 265, we don't need that. Let's go to 212. And now we have this going around the way it's supposed to. Now, sometimes, if I were to render this out, wah, 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 do you see these black bars? Not good. If we have our image plane and we see black bars there, just press Fit to Resolution Gate. And let's see if we render that again. There we go. We've gotten rid of the black bars now. So that is just a common thing that happens where it'll throw itself. I hope that's a rock. I don't know what that is. Trick or treat, I guess. So if I hit play, it's tracking nicely. And I got myself this little shape on the doorstep. Now let's do something with this. First thing I'm going to do is make it so I can actually see. So I'm actually going to go into 2 layout. I'm going to go here, 3D camera tracker, and then here. That's pretty good. Now this is where it's disorienting. There's that back image, and then there's that piece. We need to get this to kind of line up with it. So we'll move this thing around until it looks like it's sitting on that. Now what's really cool about this is we can actually take this track solid and copy and paste some of these rotational values to make it so it looks like it's lining up. So the rotates can be transferred. Since this is a circle or a sphere, I do not care. I'm just going to do that. But if you have like a robot or something that needs to sit on a plane, what you would need to do is make sure that that's following that same plane. So I have this here. And yes, I know it's not a pumpkin. I don't think we have to worry about actually what it is. Just making that sort of look like it's there. Now I'm going to expand this out even more. And I'm going to add material. Before I do that, I'm going to save. All right, so now material. I'm going to go to Arnold, and I'm going to use a standard surface. Let's go ceramic, and I'm going to change this color. So some of these look good, and some of these don't because of the level of reflectivities on it, the level of reflection. So when we have a lot of reflection on it, and it's not actually reflecting our environment, then we end up making something that doesn't seem very believable. So I'm going to use something like this for now, and I'm going to throw that on this thing. So here's this, here's that, and then this thing. Let me open up. Well, first, let me put it on a light. So I know there's a light coming from from up to down. So I'm going to go from Arnold, lights, area light. Sky dome, not a good idea because it's dark out. Like it's pitch black when I recorded this. So I'm going to bring this up in the air. And I'm kind of estimating where that light is above my pumpkin or sphere. Remember, when I told you guys to record your videos, I told you to be cognizant of the lights in your area, because this is how it's easy to set up. If you need to re-record, fine. Now that you see kind of how this is going to be done, it's going to be a little more helpful. Now that I have that light, I'm going to go into my Arnold render view, and I'm going to turn that on, and I'm also going to my attribute editor and start cranking some lights. Oh, trick or treat, y'all. Okay, so 15.
Instead of handing out any, this is what you're doing.
Yeah, I just gave out rendered spheres.
You're scared of kids.
Yeah, they got scared.
Hitting somebody's torch.
Yeah.
Why is it got that weird circle around it?
It's a shadow.
Like, no, not the shadow around the center of it. It's like a weird ring.
Yes, because you're having bounce light from the bottom up. Since this is a physical-based renderer, you're going to have that. I'm going to change this to Cylinder. That's not what I want. I want disk. There we go. So this is more like a round light shining down, which is kind of similar to the type of shape of light I have at my house. And now that I have that,
Can you go into like edge mode and like pull it back so that the light board was more like pointed?
yeah.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do is turn on color temperature. And should this be, what kind of color is this light? A yellow light, correct. So should the temperature be higher or lower? So warmer actually gets bluer. Think about a flame. A blue flame is super hot versus an orange flame. So we actually want to lower this down a little bit to get some orange. There we go. Check out that oranginess. So that's almost the same color as that piece right here. Cool way to be able to tell this is if this object right here, if we just make another EI standard, and let me just do this right here.
Is there a color picker tool, like an eyedropper tool in that?
Yes.
There is.
The eyedropper tool, when you're sampling, you got it right here. But it's not really, it doesn't always, work the way you expect it to, because you see it didn't really change much. But this is a white material, and now you can kind of tell that's a white background piece. We can tell what that light is doing. So now if we were to keep messing around with this light, I can change that color temperature to try and match that. So I'm pretty close to that right here. Pretty cool how we can get all that stuff to work that way. Now, the next thing I'm doing is I'm being aware of my shape of my light. Do you see how small the shadows are underneath these right here? That means I have to adjust the scale of the light, and sometimes the position of that. So if I push that back further here, it goes back along that plane.
It should be forward more, right?
It probably needs to go.
Almost in front of it. The shadows are probably almost in
Whoop.
front of the eye. Actually, they are in front of
I lost my shadows. Well, that's fun. Close Arnold and open it up again because it's being naughty. And there we go. So it's starting to look okay, but you know what? I don't want this thing to render. I don't want this plane to be here when I render it out. So what we're going to do is make another material. This is a really cool material, and it's called Shadow Matte. When you press this button, it just makes this thing right here. If I middle mouse button drag that to my scene, just this shape right here, middle mouse button drag that, bam, it's a gone. Pretty cool, right? Because now I just have that shadow. But if you only learn one thing from me for the rest of your life, please learn a lot of things though. I appreciate lots of learning. This part, shadows aren't black. We do not exist in a black hole. Please don't do this. It looks fake. It looks like crap. And you're going, if I were a zombie, I would just scream that out loud. I don't know why, but that would be the only thing I would say over and over again. Shadows aren't black, and I'd hunt you down. I would hunt you down.
It's genuinely like a creepy thing to just say.
I would yell at
Shadows
you.
aren't black. It sounds so cryptic.
What are shadows made out of?
Blues.
Yeah.
What? Thank you. Exactly the sentence I wanted. Yes. So shadows are the absence of light. So there's still a bounce light. Thank you. Yes, it's That's what we want to show. There's some ambience in the scene. So even though there's a direct shadow on it, there's still some other light happening there. So you're not getting a solid black thing anywhere. Now in movies and stuff, there's a term called crushing the blacks, and it's when you take shadows and the contrast, and you get these really, really rich, high contrast scenes that happen. The highlights get really popping and all that fun stuff. You're not doing that with this. We're not stylizing it. We kind of want this to blend in. So what we could do with this is just mess around with our shadow opacity. So I'm going to reduce some of this. And my color, I'm going to change this to probably more of an orangey brown. And if this wants to cooperate, I think I have too many windows open. Oh, there you go, buddy. So if I go over here, that looks great, right? We're now on another planet. So we don't want it to be like to the point where it's very obvious, like fake. We're trying to get this so it's maybe. So I'm messing with my saturation. Okay, so the hue is pretty close there. Maybe a little bit darker. So that's getting pretty close. I'm going to keep messing with that setting here and the opacity. And you'll notice if I bring that opacity up, it starts to kind of get a little bit better. The backlighting, not really anything you'll notice anything right now. So I have this. Still not 100% happy with the location of where these lights are, or the shadow is, because it's really, that's pretty big. So we can play with a lot of other things on here. The spread of our light, the density. So if I reduce some of that shadow density, it's also similar to that same concept over here with the, that's the same one right there. The matte having its opacity. So I'm going to reduce a little bit of the density. You'll notice I can even change the shadow color on that in here too. Now, there are a number of little settings on these things. We can also increase the samples of it to get a more realistic level of that. I'm not going to do that for too much because it's going to crash, or not crash Maya, but make it a little bit too intense. You'll notice as I mess with my exposure, there's a certain happy level. If you go too high, it washes the thing out. Too low, and it looks a little demonic. So we want to make sure that we have enough levels of this, but we'll play around with this in After Effects as well. And now this is being driven by my color temperatures. Okay, let's say this is getting there. I just want to do one thing to give a little bit more definition on this, and that's going to be letting my brain at least see a shape here. All right, so I got this.
There's an odd number of them.
That's okay. And then bevel it up. I know. I know. It's not meant to be. All right, smooth. Where's? Oh, whew, okay. So here's this thing. It's still not great. If there were a texture map and stuff that you guys should be making for this, it'll look better. Let's also push the color on this because, you know. Yeah, it does need to be a lot more orange.
Yeah, it's like yellow.
That's great. So you see that fun of working with all these different little settings can change everything around. Subsurface. I'm going to reduce that by quite a bit. Sheen, rest in peace.
He died?
No, not yet. But I'm just saying, soon probably. That man does not take care of himself. So I'm just messing around with stuff. So he was really good in those comedies in the early 90s. That's all I remember. All right, so this is starting to get there, but right now it looks like a flashlight shining straight down on this, and none of these other ones are doing that, right? We can kind of see more of a face on here. This is just like interrogation. So notice the bigger that is, the less that happens to be occurring. So that can help.
It almost looks like a pumpkin.
Yeah, almost.
Like a pumpkin that's upside down and you hit with a hammer.
Yeah, someone might want that on there, all that fun stuff. I'm going to be talking about more render layers and stuff with you guys in coming classes, but as an intro of how this can work, this is not too bad. So how do we get this thing to render out if we want this to render? So if I were to take this thing and render it, which I would do a lot more work than that pile of garbage, but let's say this is something I like. I could take my rendering. I'll go to my render settings. I'm going to change this to name_number extension, and that needs to go to 212. And we are not going to sit through and wait for this to render. Changing that to AE 3D camera tracker. This needs to be at 1080.
Woo! We get to render high quality.
Yes, and maybe the cameras that you guys are checking out don't do that, so that would be 720.
They record in 4K.
You guys have a different camera than the one I was showing you guys.
Yeah, the 1066 is recording.
Oh, yeah, there's a...
Or, I don't know why I said 1066. That's not. What, 5500s? Something like that?
Mhm.
They record in 4K.
Okay.
I know they can do that because there was no need for us to do that, but Scott told us they could do that.
So, we have this thing here. We have this all ready to go. What if I rendered this? What would it look like? If I were to use Arnold, and that's not Arnold. Now that looks nice if we just zoomed in like that, but that's not how we'd want that to be. Arnold render view. Let's say I just want this one. Where the heck are you getting your images from? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
That was weird. So that's what it's rendering. I don't want all this stuff. All I want is my pump and the shadow. So that's too much stuff. So there's a cool thing that we can do. This background, we can go into the attribute editor, and we can go into...
Oh, you don't want us just rendering out the whole video?
Nope. We're going to change our display mode to none. And now it's just this. So now when this renders as an EXR, let's make sure that that's an EXR. Yes, so that does look weird, right? So it's an EXR, that's good. I'm going to tell this to render somewhere. And give it a home. So I'll tell this to go pump and select and let it render. Now I'm going to cut you guys loose as this does this, and I'm going to show you in the next section how we can put this all together. Now, holy cow, do you see how fast Maya's rendering? Right. This is going to touch on what we'll be talking about for the rest of the semester about rendering in layers. So instead of rendering a character with a whole bunch of crap in the background that's not moving, it's totally useless to us, render the character walking with a shadow. That's it. And then put it on a background plate that doesn't move. You've saved yourself hours, if not days, of extra render time. So very, very helpful to do this. And we'll be talking about render settings soon, next class actually. So I'm going to cut you guys loose as we work on this, and let me stop the video.